This is Vinocity Wine Stories. I'm your host, Vicki Miller. With Wine Stories, we go over the color commentary behind wine, how it's made, the places where it's made, and how we can enjoy it more. Today we're going to talk about a question that I get really frequently, and that is, does it matter whether or not a wine has a screw cap, or is it more important for it to be stoppered with a cork? Well, let me tell you, for most circumstances, it really doesn't matter. But let's talk about cork first. Cork actually comes from the bark of certain types of oak trees from certain Mediterranean countries. When cork is made, when it's taken from bark and becomes cork that's suitable for a stopper in a bottle of wine, certain chemicals are added to it, and unfortunately, in very rare circumstances, that can have an impact that's really a negative impact on wine. So years ago, winemakers were looking for a different way to cap the bottles of wine. So they started experimenting with regular old metal screw caps to see if that would work, and it did. So screw caps are a perfectly suitable way to stopper a bottle of wine. But let's go back to cork for a minute. For wines that are meant to be aged for a long period of time, cork allows a little bit of oxygen to get into the bottle. Now, typically, oxygen is not a good thing to be exposed to the wine, because oxygen will cause the wine to start to deteriorate more rapidly. And so we want to keep oxygen away from wine, particularly once it's bottled. But it is believed that corks allow a tiny little bit of oxygen in, and for wines that are meant to be aged for a long time, it's believed that that little bit of oxygen helps the wine age much better. Most wine is meant to be consumed in the first 3 years after it's bottled. So for the vast majority of wine, this issue with the corks really doesn't matter because they're not meant to be aged. But for those wines that are meant to be aged for a period of time, it's always better to have cork, and that's what those winemakers will always use. Otherwise, for the vast majority of wine, it doesn't matter. You can use a cork, you can use a glass stopper, you can use a screw cap, anything, as long as you keep the oxygen away from the wine. So go out and enjoy. Don't worry about the screw cap, don't worry about the cork, just enjoy those bottles of wine. This is Vinocity Wine Stories. I'm Vicki Miller. See you again soon.